Hello, YouTube land. Well, as you can see, I'm starting off with a vice. So, you know there's stuff to talk about. I posted yesterday, but I marked it as private for good reason. Because I knew, as I was recording it, it was a very angry posting. And I set it for private because there are a few people I'm willing to let see it, but not everyone. Oh, excuse me. So the reason I set it for private is this. As you saw from Monday's posting, we went to Bobby and the Strays on Saturday, and we were waiting to hear back about this beagle puppy named Harper. Well, I found out through social media that Harper was adopted Tuesday. I found this out on Wednesday. I commented on the picture about how I wished we'd been notified because we'd had our hopes up and we were sad to hear that she wouldn't be coming to live with us. Which, as far as I can tell, is a acceptable, valid, non-aggressive statement of personal feeling. I didn't slight the person who ended up adopting her. I didn't slight the shelter for the fact that they didn't choose us. I just said, I wish we'd been notified because we really were hoping to be able to bring her home. Well, a few hours after I posted that, maybe 3, the manager of the shelter, who we met on Saturday, called our house. Now, when I saw the phone number come up on the caller ID, I thought, well, maybe there's still one of the puppies from that litter left and they want to know if we're interested in her. Could have been anything simple, well, would you also be interested in this animal you met? Or is there any particular interest in this, that, or the other thing? Before I answered the phone, I assumed it was something benign. I answered the phone, and this woman is on me like white on rice. For 5 solid minutes, she bawls me out. Not yelling, but bawls me out. I'm not happy for the puppy, that it got a good home. I'm being too critical. I, shouldn't be so childish, and it was really unfair what I posted. For 5 solid minutes. From the instant I answered the phone, my heart rate skyrocketed because I could tell this was an attack. This was a personal attack because she called my house. The only way she could have called my house is if she personally looked up the information on our application and took time out of her day to respond to me privately because she was too chicken shit to do it on social media because I posted it on Facebook on their public page. Instead of answering on their public page, she deleted my comment and called me at home to chew me out. Well, as I said, after 5 straight minutes of her ridiculousness, I finally interrupted her, corrected her on each individual point of ass-hattery that she had stated, and explained to her that we would no longer be dealing with anyone as childish and ridiculous and abusive of their position as she was, and I hung up on her. Now, I don't hold her actions against the shelter altogether. I don't think everyone in the organization is like this. Stupid cigarette. Burnout. I don't hold it against the volunteers. I don't think it should be taken out against the animals. Any animal that ends up in a shelter deserves a loving home. Just like any human deserves a loving home. The truth of the matter is I am happy that these animals get adopted, even if it's not by us. But her behavior yesterday was so vile, in the sense that it was a breach of ethics, an abuse of position, an abuse of power, an abuse of privacy, specifically ours, that I turned around, I explained to Sam what happened, because I don't want to blindside him with anything, and I reported her to the Better Business Bureau. Now, I didn't request an apology, I didn't request remuneration, I didn't request anything. I simply posted it as something they needed to be aware of, because with behavior like that, I seriously doubt and question the good work this particular place can do. Because if she will privately call someone and attack them for being sad that they weren't chosen, then if you actually did something wrong, like were vile against a particular person or a particular person who adopted an animal or some other multitude of reasons and ways you could be vile about something, she might very well show up and shoot somebody. Or at the very least throw a punch. Because that's just ridiculous. You know, I've spent more than 10 years in customer service. I specialize in conflict resolution. That was beyond the pale for me. It really was. So we'll be dealing with a different shelter in the future. And I came to find later on that night through someone on Facebook who's the one who helped us get Tribble through Bobby and the Strays. And this particular person, I know a few people who've worked there or through there. This particular person said to me, I didn't even mention who it was originally. And she private messaged me and said, I'm guessing it was Andrea? And I went, you're absolutely right. That's exactly who it was. And I reported her to the Better Business Bureau because she is ruining their reputation. Her behavior is ridiculous. That she is allowed to be a manager is asinine. So all the stress of that, not so surprisingly, I woke up this morning with a criminally bad headache. I mean, criminally bad. This is cruel and inhumane torture kind of bad. And I suffer migraines. So, for me to say that, it's got to be pretty vile. I had to take 5 ibuprofen, and that barely took the edge off. I went out and I got some more of my normal headache medication. I took 4 of those, and I only kind of feel better. I'm nauseous to the point that eating is really a crapshoot. I don't know. And I keep working away at my nails because my nail biting is a stress response. But it's one of those things that it makes me think about other experiences in my life where I've had to deal with idiot people and the lessons I learn from dealing with idiot people, which if you're smart, you'll try and do. With every asshat you encounter, you learn something about yourself and your ability to moderate and tolerate and equivocate, quite frankly. In the early formative years of my life, I had to put up with a lot of crap from my mother. And it taught me how to be a lot more patient and open-minded with a lot of other people because given the unreasonableness I dealt with at home, almost anyone else seemed simple. They really did. So from very young ages, I started learning how to deal with stupidity and how to correct stupid people and how to get around stupid people and their stupidity. And I learned to have a pretty high appreciation for anyone who showed reasonable intelligence, let alone high intelligence, in my opinion. which is part of how I ended up in the friendship and subsequent relationship with Liz. And most of our relationship was long distance. A lot of it was really off the wall crazy in several different ways for several different reasons. And as much as I understand people wanting to erase traumatic, horrific, or other such descriptive word relationships from their past, and I've had those feelings about several relationships I've had in my life, in the long run, I wouldn't get rid of them. Because it's like those questions people ask you in philosophy class or theory classes. Well, if you could go back in time and undo one action, what would it be and why? I wouldn't. All of those actions are necessary dominoes in how I've ended up. And there's nothing so horrific about how I am now that I feel it would be necessary to go back and change them. And that happened actually, a question like that in a group. I was in one of my classes during the day at summer camp, at Maine Teen Camp. And our stage combat instructor, which is the class I was taking, his name was Mike McKibben. He worked on Last of the Mohicans, the film. Very, very nice guy. But he was very big on those kind of theoretical questions. And it was raining, so we were in the theater instead of outside working. And we went around in this circle, and it was a very popular class, asking and answering the question. Well, when it got to my turn, several of my friends were in that class, and one of my friends, I want to say Walter, I don't remember exactly, might have been Liz, said, oh, well, I know, she'd get rid of her mother. And I stopped him, and I don't remember who said it, but I stopped that person. I said, no, I really wouldn't. I'd get rid of my genetic inherited headaches. Because my mother being my mother, as I said, is a fundamental part of who I am and how I developed. But my headaches and subsequent migraines have taken whole days away from my life because I've been crippled in pain, because I've been suffering. And my chronic tension headaches have ruined many an average day. Because looking at me, you generally can't tell that every day I have some degree of headache. It's true. So even then, I was 14, 15, I said, no, I'd get rid of my headaches. My mother's a part of who I always will be. I don't want to change who I am. Getting rid of her while making my life easier would also get rid of the part of her that is me. And I say that for a couple of reasons, because it's true, because it's worth sharing, and because my experience with my mother shaped how I handled my very long relationship with Liz. And my relationship with Liz shaped how I dealt with several other people during that time frame. But as long as I was with Liz, I wasn't with anybody else. Long distance or not, that's just how I am. I am personally a monogamous person. I have no problem with polyamorous relationships, assuming everyone involved in them is okay with everyone else doing what they're doing. In my personal case, I don't want to be polyamorous. I want to be monogamous. That's a personal choice. So dealing with Liz taught me about dealing with other relationships. And a lot of what was involved in those two relationships taught me to tone down. It really did. I mean, a lot of it was me, being encouraged and taught to just stop being so loud and stop being so aggressive and stop being so pushy. And, everyone had this perception of me as being so much like my mother, who was just an absolutely vile human being if she didn't get her way. And if she did get her way, she was still vile, just not so in your face about it. And as I mentioned recently, Sam and I had a discussion a few weeks ago about how I was when he first met me, almost 5 years ago now, more than that, and how he kind of wishes I was more like that because I was very focused and I was very determined, and I refer to it as gung-ho. I was very gung-ho about a lot of things. If I said something was going to happen, by God, come hell, high water, or fucktard in my path, it was going to get accomplished my way. Which is a skill I learned from my mother. And as I started my relationship with Sam, I started giving up that part of my personality. Because you can't be that way with Sam. He doesn't handle that kind of abrasive, blunt personality very well. He's very shy, he's very reserved, he's very quiet. Which doesn't mean he's not fun. He can certainly warm up to people, but it takes him longer than the average person. He is a naturally shy individual, and I am so completely not. So I started sandblasting away that part of myself to make it easier to be around him. Not easier for me, but easier for him to deal with me. And in the few weeks since he's mentioned he wanted to know why I stopped being like that, he's also expressed concern that he was the cause, and he felt he was the cause. He had a feeling he was the cause, and he's right. He also expressed that he felt bad about that. Because I never used to be a procrastinator. You know? I used to hammer at things hour after hour, after day, after week, until it went my way, by God. And a lot of things got accomplished that would have been difficult, that would have taken a lot longer done his way. But as I've given that up, a lot of other dominoes have fallen wrongly. And when yesterday happened, I realized I was right. I mean, I told him he was right when he first said it, but I realized he was right for other reasons, not the least of which is I don't have tolerance for people's bullshit. I don't. Which is why I can specialize in conflict resolution and customer service. Because I don't deal with the nitpicky little things. I have a desire, a capacity, and a capability to honestly slice through so much of the bullshit people layer things with and get as close to the heart of the situation as possible and fix that. Because that's the big domino. You fix that, and everyone else tends to fall in line. Everything else tends to fall in line. So when Andrea called me yesterday and behaved in this idiotic, malicious, asinine manner, I knew what I had to do, and I did it. I did it. I interrupted her, I corrected her, I hung up on her, and then I reported her to what I consider to be the proper authoritative body. And by reporting her through the Better Business Bureau, the company is informed of what she did. So I don't have to go through all of the callback, back channel, emailing nonsense involved in calling, headquarters and calling the other location and trying to find her supervisor. No. I went straight to the Better Business Bureau and said, look, I want this place to stay open. I want these animals to get help. I don't want people to have to deal with her idiocy. And it needs to be made clear to this charity, this shelter, that they have a person working for them who makes it impossible to believe that good things will come of it. And being that straightforward about things is helping me in other ways too. It's getting easier for me to think clearly and not distract myself as much. And it's getting easier for me to, in some ways, take care of myself. Because I spent a lot of years as a child being taught that I shouldn't care about me, I should care about doing what I was told. And as I grew up, I spent a lot of years following that edict and thinking, well, I have to take care of everyone. I was designed to be a whipping girl. I was designed to be a servant. That's how I was trained. That's what I'm supposed to do. And about the time I turned, sometime between 18 and 23, in that time frame of life, I started realizing I didn't care about other people. I mean, I did in the sense that I had to deal with them, but I didn't really care about other people. Because none of them showed any care for me. Nobody showed any compassion. Nobody showed any concern for what was good for me. In years since, I've realized that, my dad does care about me. But he had been so abraded by my mother, like everyone else, that it made dealing with each other impossible. And I say that with no exaggeration at all. I mean, it, honest to God, made it impossible. And it took a long time for both of us to get significantly past that. No one gets totally past traumatic history, but significantly past it. A lot of the credit for which I give to my mom, Lynn, my stepmom, because she's a fantastic human being. And she puts up with him in ways that can only be done if you love someone for their foibles. And I love her for several reasons, one of which is loving him like that, and one of which is she understands the extent of the history between he and I and what used to be, and she still wants to be part of this family anyway. She does a really good job of it, too. But yeah, so since then, he and I have gotten significantly past that, but I guess the final point of this very long, I understand it's a very long post, is that you learn something from everyone. Whether you want to learn it or not, you probably need to learn it. And you're not going to realize it when it happens, and you're not going to realize it the next day, the next week, or the next month in all likelihood. But if you have the ability to keep it in mind, sooner or later, everything you've ever been through is going to teach you something about how to deal with what you're going to go through. So thank you to my mother for being a criminally negligent, sociopathic, dictatorial bitch. And thank you to my ex, Liz, for being relatively similar. And thank you to Lynn and Lorenzo for respectively putting up with the absolute psychoticness that my life has turned me into at times. And for caring enough about everyone else to even make the effort. And thank you to my husband. A, for being my husband. B, for putting up with me. Which, yes, I did say at my wedding. And C, for understanding that no matter how positively or negatively I may react to something he ever says or does, that the baseline reality is I just want him to be honest. People screw up. I mean, we had this discussion this morning walking to the train. He said to me, well, in order for me to get this, make a deal with me and I'll do something for you. It'll be a trade-off. Is there anything about me that, you want me to change or to work on? And I said, yeah, but you know what? Making a deal with you isn't going to do anything about it. I've been telling you these things for years. And the only thing I want is to start a family. I know that's not something you're willing to use as a bargaining chip. And quite frankly, I didn't marry you to reshape you, because if I marry you to reshape you, there is an implicit understanding. There is a tacit understanding there of reciprocity. Because if I marry you, so I have the effort and the unqualified right to change you, I am saying that marriage means you get to change me. Fuck no. That's not what I'm saying at all. No one has the right to change me but me. And my husband is my husband. I have chosen to marry him. I have chosen to be with him for as long as we can be together. Hopefully till death do us part. I don't want it to be the case that anyone changes for anyone else. I want it to be the case that it's like with the me roughing off the edges. I'm not changing because he wants me to. I'm changing because it makes it easier for us to get along. Because I'm doing it in an effort to make our relationship better. That's why you should change yourself for someone else. If at all. This has been one of those really strange and stressful and ridiculous weeks. And it's noon, and I've had a few handfuls of popcorn and a couple of Eggos, so I should probably eat lunch. What? I have no idea because I don't feel great. But I'm gonna go. I know I've been talking for a very, very long time, and anyone who manages to sit through the entirety of this thing, thank you. And I apologize, and I really do try to keep these to a much more reasonable length, but sometimes there's just too much on my mind. And I could stop and write it down and post it somewhere else, but you don't get the same clarity. I don't get the same clarity. And it's certainly a lot more difficult to express the emotional portent, importance, and emphasis when you put it on a page. Because there's a lot you get from mannerism, there's a lot you get from volume, tone, body expression, which is part of the reason I like doing this. So that's the end of my rambling for now. And hopefully something good comes of my reporting this ridiculous human being to the Better Business Bureau. And hopefully it leads to us finding a different shelter where we find the next furry baby that's supposed to come home and be part of our family.